Mark Messier wasn't just a captain, he was a force of nature, a leader who played with fire in his veins and an iron will that could bend entire games to his command. He thrived in chaos, hunted momentum, and never backed down from a challenge, no matter how brutal. But for all his toughness and control, there were a handful of players who pushed him past his limits, igniting a level of hatred that even fans could feel through their TV screens. And the real shock, some of these rivalries nearly turned into full-scale wars. Today, we uncover the 6 players who got under Messier's skin like no one else, and the stories he never forgot. If you're ready to dive into the real battles that define Messier's career, hit that like button. It helps push these legendary hockey stories to more fans who still love the old-school fire of the game. Number 1. Joel Otto, Calgary Flames. Joel Otto wasn't the kind of rival you forgot. Standing 6'4", built like a sheet of steel, and owning one of the most dominant defensive center roles of the 1980s, Otto was the perfect agitator to disrupt everything Mark Messier tried to establish on the ice. Otto didn't need to score. He existed to win faceoffs, shut down stars, and make life hell for anyone wearing Edmonton blue and orange. And no rivalry was more venom-filled than Flames versus Oilers, a pure combustible hatred that defined the Battle of Alberta. Otto's ability to tie up Messier in the circle, lean on him in corners, and use his huge frame to clog every lane made him the one opponent Messier could never quite ignore. Otto didn't chirp much, but his smirk alone irritated Messier more than most players' trash talk ever could. The real fire came during those playoff wars. Every spring, it felt like Alberta was splitting apart at the seams. Cheap shots, elbows high in scrums, sticks swung a little too freely. Chaos was the norm, and at the heart of it were Messier and Otto, colliding again and again. Face-off controversies became a theme. Otto would hook Messier's stick, pin his glove, lean illegally with that massive body, and somehow still get away with it. Each stolen draw was another spark in the growing inferno between them. And then came the moment that still enrages fans. The infamous interference call, where Otto clipped Messier just enough to free a Flames forward for a critical goal. Edmonton fans screamed robbery, Messier exploded on the officials, and Otto skated away with that stone-faced confidence that only fueled the hatred further. It wasn't just physical, it was psychological warfare. By then, their clashes weren't just hockey plays, they were challenges to pride, leadership, and identity. Otto embodied everything Calgary tried to use to break Edmonton's dynasty, and Messier responded with fury, grit, and captain-level vengeance. Every shift between them carried the weight of a province, an era, and a rivalry that burned hotter than almost anything in NHL history. Otto forced Messier to dig deeper, hit harder, and lead stronger, shaping the Battle of Alberta into the legendary battleground fans still talk about today. But if Otto pushed Messier's buttons, the next guy lit his fuse. Number 2. Claude Lemieux, Devil's Avalanche. Claude Lemieux was the kind of player who could turn an entire arena against him with a single shift. Known as one of the greatest agitators in NHL history, Lemieux thrived on chaos, mind games, and cheap shots delivered with a straight face. He wasn't just effective, he was infuriating. And if there was one type of player Mark Messier despised, it was the guy who played dirty, stirred the pot, and hid behind the rulebook the moment things got heated. Messier respected toughness, but he hated cowardice. And to him, Lemieux represented everything wrong with NHL antagonists who pushed limits but avoided accountability. The tension between them only intensified when the playoffs arrived. Lemieux's game elevated under pressure, but so did his dirtiness. He would slash behind the play, cross-check after whistles, jaw at star players, and somehow still avoid retaliation, thanks to perfectly timed escapes or strategic turtling. Messier never forgot those moments. Their matchups were filled with scrums, scuffles, and those long, cold stares that said everything without a single word spoken. And the personal resentment grew year after year. Lemieux didn't just want to beat Messier, he wanted to annoy him, frustrate him, and unbalance him emotionally. The rivalry took a dark turn during one infamous meeting when Lemieux delivered a cheap shot that sent Messier crashing awkwardly into the boards, a moment fans still remember as one of the dirtiest hits of that era. The arena erupted. Messier snapped. Even players on the bench stood up knowing something had crossed the line. That was the night Messier went after him with a fury only a few opponents had ever experienced. Lemieux skated away pretending innocence, but everyone in the building knew he had lit a fuse that would burn for years. But through that chaos, something else emerged. Messier's leadership instinct. Instead of letting Lemieux drag him into stupidity, Messier used the hatred to sharpen his focus. He hit harder, skated faster, and elevated his physical edge to match Lemieux's psychological warfare. Lemieux forced Messier to evolve, to become a captain who could withstand even the dirtiest tricks without losing control. Still, as infuriating as Lemieux was, he wasn't the most physically dangerous rival Messier ever faced. His mind games were nothing compared to the pure violence waiting in number 3. Number 3, Scott Stevens, Devils. If there was one player in the NHL who embodied raw bone-crushing destruction, it was Scott Stevens. Known for delivering some of the most devastating hits the league has ever seen, Stevens patrolled the blue line like a wrecking machine waiting for his next victim. And when it came to Rangers versus Devils, those battles were not just games, they were territorial wars. Every meeting was a fight for dominance between two teams that hated each other. And at the center of that hatred stood Mark Messier and Scott Stevens. Their collisions were not accidental. They were personal statements, violent declarations of who owned the ice. From the moment the puck dropped, Stevens made it clear that Messier was not getting an inch of open space. If Messier crossed the blue line, Stevens was there. If Messier drove the corner, Stevens planted him. Their encounters always sparked chaos, scrums after whistles, heated words on the bench, and mutual intimidation that fans could feel even through the television. Stevens played with a ruthless commitment to physical punishment, and Messier, being the competitor he was, refused to back down from the challenge. Their clashes became legendary symbols of Eastern Conference warfare. The shock moment that still echoes through Rangers history came in one series when Stevens lined up Messier for a hit so violent it nearly changed the entire trajectory of the matchup. Messier had just picked up the puck near center ice, head slightly down, when Stevens launched into him with a hit that sent the Garden into a stunned silence. Messier dropped, the boards rattled, and even Devils players looked shocked by the impact. For a moment, it felt like everything could fall apart for the Rangers. Their captain shaken, the momentum shifting, the series slipping. But then Messier got up, a bloodied, furious, defiant. A moment that cemented the rivalry as one of the most brutal of the era. Those collisions came with a price. Messier knew every shift against Stevens would hurt, and Stevens knew Messier was the one player tough enough to keep coming back. That is what made the rivalry so unforgettable. The mutual respect hidden beneath absolute violence. Stevens tested Messier's durability, leadership, and pride in ways few others ever could. Every hit was a challenge, every stare down was a threat, and every shift was a reminder that greatness sometimes requires standing in the path of destruction and refusing to move. But if Stevens brought destruction, number 4 brought pure chaos. Number 4, Tie Domi Maple Leafs. Tie Domi was chaos, wrapped in a 5'8" fire hydrant of fists and fearlessness. Known as one of the toughest and most fearless enforcers in NHL history, Domi built his entire reputation on taking on giants, and there was no bigger target for him than Mark Messier. Domi loved going after stars, especially the ones who played with authority, and Messier was the ultimate prize. Anytime the Rangers and Leafs met, Domi made it his mission to get under Messier's skin, whether through chirps, late shoves, or that trademark smirk that signaled trouble was coming. And Messier, being Messier, did not tolerate disrespect lightly. Their rivalry exploded in countless scrums, where Domi tried to bait Messier into dropping the gloves. Domi did not care about the score, he cared about the moment he could throw Messier off his game, even for a shift. Sometimes he would shadow him after whistles, sometimes he would jab at him in face-offs, and sometimes he would skate by the Rangers bench just to chirp him directly. It did not matter that Messier was a superstar and Domi was an enforcer, the hatred flowed evenly. And when Domi crossed the line, it was not subtle. Cheap shots behind the play, punches thrown in scrums, and late hits that drew gasps from the crowd were all part of his playbook. The moment that sent their rivalry into legend happened during a heated Rangers versus Leafs game when Domi blindsided Messier near the boards, sparking what nearly turned into an all-out brawl. Messier launched himself back at Domi, teammates poured in from every direction, gloves flew, and the ice turned into a battlefield. Fans went wild. Commentators lost their minds. Even the referees looked overwhelmed. For a split second, it felt like hockey's equivalent of a riot, and at the center of it were two players who simply refused to bow to one another. Domi had landed his shot, but Messier's reaction showed exactly why he commanded respect across the league. But what made this rivalry especially compelling was Messier's response to someone as wild and unpredictable as Domi. Instead of engaging in every fight, Messier learned to control the chaos. He focused on discipline, leadership, and picking his moments, the traits that separated him from the league's brawlers. That did not mean he backed down, it meant he outsmarted the whirlwind that Domi brought to every confrontation. Their battles became psychological as much as physical, each clash a reminder that not all wars are fought with fists alone. Domi was chaos, but number 5 was calculating, and it cut even deeper. Number 5, Brendan Shanahan, Blues Red Wings. Brendan Shanahan was a rare kind of opponent. Perfect blend of brute force and elite scoring touch. Unlike many of Messier's rivals who relied on intimidation alone, Shanahan could hurt you on the scoreboard and hurt you physically. At 6'3" and built like a tank, he played with a sharp edge and zero hesitation. And Messier, who thrived on imposing his will and dominating physically, saw Shanahan as a genuine threat to everything he controlled on the ice. Shanahan was not afraid of Messier, did not bow to his presence, and did not buy into the mythology that surrounded the captain. Their rivalry was not about annoyance, it was about power. Whenever the Rangers faced the Blues or the Red Wings, fans knew something violent, dramatic, or downright explosive was coming. Their battles were fueled by competitiveness and mutual resentment. Messier hated how Shanahan could take over a game with a hit or a goal. Shanahan hated how Messier commanded respect everywhere he went. They exchanged cross-checks, traded punches, and delivered heavy hits that made the boards shake. Their scoring races added even more heat. If Messier buried one, Shanahan answered. If Shanahan delivered a punishing hit, Messier returned the favor. Every game felt like an arm wrestling match between two alpha forces. The moment that pushed their rivalry into NHL folklore came during a heated battle at the Garden. Shanahan caught Messier with a high rattling hit along the boards, a hit so impactful it sent fans into instant rage. Messier, furious and shaken, stormed back at Shanahan, and the two collided in a violent confrontation that nearly erupted into a full-on fight. Teammates jumped in, gloves flew, and the arena roared as the two leaders stared each other down with venom in their eyes. It was the kind of moment that defines eras. Star versus star. Power versus power. Neither man willing to blink. Even in a league filled with tough players, this clash had a different kind of electricity. The kind that makes a rivalry unforgettable. Their battles shaped both players. Shanahan forced Messier to defend his territory, to prove he still ruled the ice even against a younger, stronger, equally fearless opponent. Messier pushed Shanahan to elevate his physicality and leadership, knowing he had to match one of the greatest captains in history. Every hit, every goal, every glare contributed to a rivalry built on respect, violence, and competitive fire. One of the purest examples of two warriors refusing to yield. But even Shanahan could not match the hatred Messier saved for number 6. Number 6. Pavel Bure Canucks. Pavel Bure was unlike any rival Mark Messier had ever faced. While most of Messier's enemies were bruisers, agitators, or physical challengers, Bure was something entirely different. A blur of impossible speed, highlight reel talent, and lethal scoring ability. Known as the Russian Rocket, Bure could turn a game on its head in a single stride. And for Messier, a captain who built his dominance on grit, physicality, and emotional control, Bure's flashy and electrifying style represented everything he hated in a rival. A player who did not need intimidation to take over a game. Add in the thick tension of the 1994 Stanley Cup Final, and you had the perfect storm for one of the most simmering and dangerous rivalries of Messier's career. That final pushed both players to their limits. Every shift felt like a collision of two hockey worlds, Messier's old school force versus Bure's new school finesse. Bure weaved through defenders with ease, while Messier hunted him with relentless physicality. Their stare-downs after whistles became iconic. You could feel the animosity boiling beneath every glare, every brush by, every moment where neither man wanted to concede an inch. And beneath all of it was the unmistakable truth. Both knew that whoever imposed their style would control the series. Then came the moment that sent shockwaves through the hockey world, the slash. During a heated exchange near the boards, Bure swung his stick and caught Messier across the arm, a strike so blatant and vicious that the entire arena erupted. Messier, stunned for only a heartbeat, turned toward Bure with a fury fans had rarely seen. Players rushed in from every direction, whistles blared, and a fight nearly exploded right then and there. The slash was not just dirty, it was personal. It was the kind of moment that could have changed the entire series if Messier had not held himself back at the very last second. Rangers fans still talk about how close the league came to witnessing a full-scale Messier meltdown, but that is what made the rivalry unforgettable. Bure forced Messier to confront a different kind of threat, one he could not simply overpower. Their battles define the storyline of the '94 final. Beauty versus brutality, finesse versus force, the unstoppable scorer versus the immovable captain. Every game felt like it was moments away from chaos, from a fight, from history imploding. And even after the series ended, the tension between them lingered like smoke after a fire. Because for Messier, some enemies were unforgettable and some wounds never healed. When you look back at Mark Messier's career, it is impossible to separate the legend from the battles that shaped him. These 6 rivals were not just opponents, they were defining forces that pushed him to the edge, sharpened his leadership, and forged the warrior who lifted teams on his back and carried them through chaos. Every slash, every stare down, every collision added a new scar to Messier's legacy, and every rivalry told a story about the intensity of old-school hockey, a time when pride mattered, toughness was currency, and respect had to be earned the hard way. Messier did not just play the game, he lived inside its fire. And these enemies, each in their own way, brought out different shades of that fire. Anger, determination, fearlessness, and the refusal to ever back down. They tested him, challenged him, and ultimately made the legend even larger. But now, I want to hear from you. Which rivalry shocked you the most? Which enemy pushed Messier the hardest? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next game. If you enjoyed this breakdown of Messier's fiercest enemies, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell. I have more legendary rivalries, untold stories, and classic NHL warfare coming soon. Do not miss the next chapter.